the most frustrating parts about making beats is spending a bunch of time creating, only to figure out that your drums still don't sound as good as you hoped they would. There are a bunch of different ways to get your drums to sound right, but today I wanted to talk to you specifically about one method that a lot of people forget. The best part is that you could even use this method to make sure your 808s and kicks blend well together. Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today we're talking about how to make your drums sound better. Now, there are a bunch of different ways to do this, but today I wanted to talk to you specifically about one very specific and guaranteed method that a lot of people forget, and that is to make sure your drums are in tune. We are all used to hearing that we should be tuning our 808s, and that's true, but I'm also here to tell you that it's just as important to tune your drum one-shots. Tuning your drum one-shots is a very simple technique, but I promise that if you nail this, you will instantly get better sounding drums without having to stress too much about mixing. Let's dive in. So the first thing that I'll say is that this technique will only really work if you've done proper sound selection. A lot of times the reason our drums and really just any sound doesn't sit well in our mixes is because we've chosen the wrong sounds. As a producer, it is our responsibility to make sure we pick the right sounds and not just the sounds that are the most accessible. Assuming you've done proper sound selection, however, the first thing you want to do is to check and see what key you are in. This is important because it'll give us a guide as to what notes we should be tuning our drums to. You can use whatever you want to check your scales and keys, but for this video, I'm going to be using one of my favorite plugins called Scalar 2, since it has a cool little graphical display that lets me see the notes of a scale on the virtual keyboard. Side note, I've mentioned this plugin a ton on this channel, but that's because it's one of my top recommendations for new producers and producers in general. I've done a full review, so I'm gonna link it up top here in case you missed it and you wanna check it out and see what it's all about, but I promise that it'll make production a lot easier for you. But okay, the beat we have here today is one from my upcoming beat tape, and if I didn't already know the key, then I would just use the detect feature here in Scalar 2. And again, if you wanna learn how to use this, make sure to watch that video. But I already know that we are in the key of F minor. So then now that I know my key, technically, as long as my drum one-shots are made up of notes that fall into the scale that I am in, so for me that would be these blue notes here, then I would be good to go. But whenever possible, I like to take things a step further. If you really want your drums to sit perfectly, then you wanna make sure you tune them to the root or the fifth note of whatever scale you are in. So for example, since I am in the scale of F minor, my root note is an F, and my fifth note, 2, 3, 4, 5, is a C, so I would want to tune my drums to either one of these two notes. Tuning your drums to the root note or the tonic of whatever scale you're in is going to instantly make them sound better because you're basically aligning your drums to the one note that is the most prominent in your song. Now, as far as why the fifth, I won't get too deep into theory, but basically, notes have pitches, and some pitches go better together. If you take a look at chords, for example, one of the most basic chord structures that we have is called a triad, which is made up of the root note, the third note, and the fifth note of a scale. These pitches go perfectly together, and that's why a chord sounds so good, and we can actually use this same concept when tuning drums. We've already talked about why the root note is a great option to tune your drums to, but as to why the fifth, in music theory, there's a thing called a perfect fifth, which is basically a term used to describe the combination between the root note and the fifth note of a scale. These two pitches are really consonant and stable, and as a result, you get a really pleasing and harmonious sound. So then tuning your drums to either one of these two notes, the root or the fifth, is going to give you the most ear-pleasing combination. This is actually the secret to getting your 808s and kicks to blend perfectly. A lot of people go straight to things like EQs and compressors and saturation, and although those things do help, a lot of people forget the fundamentals, the two fundamentals, which is basically choosing the right sounds and making sure they're attuned to each other. Now, huge disclaimer here is that tuning your drum one-shots to either the root or the fifth sometimes is impossible because those two notes might be really far away from the original note, which would result in a drastic change in pitch that would no longer suit the song. Personally, in these cases, I just pick the closest note in that scale and then just keep it moving. With kicks and 808s, however, I don't make exceptions because I want these two to sit perfectly. So if I have a situation like this, then I just simply go back and pick a different kick until I can get them both to be on the root or on a perfect fifth. But okay, now that you understand the concept, let me show you how to do it. The first thing you're going to do is download this free frequency analyzer called Span. I'll make sure to link that below in the description so you can get it. But basically, this is what we're going to be using to see the notes of our drum one-shots. So then, go ahead and load up an instance of Span, and I actually like to add it to my master bus and then solo my one-shots. That way I don't have a bunch of spanned across my mixer. Now for this plugin, I actually have a custom drum tuning setting that I got from the internet. I can't remember where, but basically if you go to this little gear icon here, copy these exact settings, and this will ensure that you get a more accurate reading. But okay, once you have this ready to go, go ahead and play or trigger your sound, and let me do that now with this kick. Now, once you do that, you will see a graph showing you audio wave spikes, and here you're looking for the tallest spike, since that is the most prominent note of your one shot, and usually the note that it is tuned to. There will be cases, much like this one here, where you will have more than one prominent spike, and that's because the sound was either layered or processed in a way that added more pitches. In these cases, I don't have a perfect solution for you, and much like before, I just pick one and keep it moving. But okay, taking a look at this example, it looks like we have two prominent spikes, and I'm actually gonna go with this one because it's slightly higher than this one here. But anyway, once you have your spike selected, hover over it and read whatever note it gives you. So looking at my graph now, I can tell that this kick is tuned to A sharp. From here, go ahead and refer back to whatever you are using to see your scale notes. For me, that would be scalar 2, and start at the note that Span told you your one shot was tuned to, and either count up or count down to see how many steps you are going to have to pitch your sound up or down. So if you take a look, an A sharp, which is what my kick was tuned to, is already part of the F minor scale, so I'm already within the key, but let's see if we can get it to either a root note or a fifth. Now, a root note is a bit too far away from my taste. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down, so that would be a drastic change in pitch. But a fifth is only 2 notes away, 2 up, so I think I'm going to do that. Now that we have all this information, all that's left to do is simply adjust our one shot by the number of steps that we need, and there's 2 ways to do it in Studio One depending on whether you're using audio or MIDI. If you're using audio, then simply go over to your timeline and locate the audio file and then right click. Here you will see a transpose box right here, and this is where you will input the number of steps you need. So for me, for example, in my case, I needed 2 steps up, so I'm going to input a 2. You might be tempted to put it in the tune box, but that is for something different that we'll talk about in a little bit. If you're using MIDI, then you will have to adjust it in whatever VST is housing your drum one-shots. And if you're using Studio One and using the Impact beat pad here, then simply open it up, click on the pad that contains that sound, and then go over to the pitch section here. Here you will find a transpose knob, and it works the exact same way. Adjust it left to go negative or right to go positive, depending on how many steps you need. Either way, once that's done, you can go back to Span and double check to make sure we are in fact in the right note. And there we can check, that's a C. If you really want to fine tune your one shots, then what I would do is also go back to Span and check your tuning again, but this time instead of looking for a letter, you're gonna be looking for the positive or negative number next to that letter. So let's go ahead and do that again. And let's go ahead and check. So if we hover over that spike again, we see the C, but you'll see that number and it'll change because it's very delicate, but let's pick there. It says 20. So make a note of whatever number is here and then go back to your sound. So for me, that would be my kick. Right click again. And this time we're gonna go over to the tune setting here. Here's where you will input the number you need. If your number was a negative, then you want to input the positive equivalent to even it out. Conversely, if you had a positive number, then you will need to input the negative equivalent. So for me, I had a positive 20. I'm going to want to put negative 20. On Impact, there is a knob to the right of the transpose knob labeled tune, and here you will do the exact same. Turn left for negative and right for positive, taking in consideration that you need to input the opposite of whatever you saw in Span. Sometimes a note might be in the right vicinity, but not entirely in tune, so this last step will help to make sure your drum one shots are more properly aligned. Now that we've done all of this, let's take a quick listen to our bass and kick, tuned and untuned, to see what effect it had. So first, let me go over and I'm gonna untune everything. And let's take a listen. And now let's go ahead and tune it back again. So 2 and -20, and let's take a listen. Now, this specific kick did have a couple of main pitches, as we saw in the analyzer, but the main one, or at least the one that I picked, is now better aligned with that bass. It's now in tune with that bass, which allows it for a more pleasing sound. Now, obviously, you want to do this with the rest of your drum one-shots, including your snares, your hi-hats, and specifically your percussion, because percussion tends to have really prominent notes. But that's it. That is how you tune your drums and make them sound even better. Super simple, but super effective. Question for you, do you already tune your drums? And if not, do you think this is something you're gonna be doing moving forward? Let me know in a comment down below. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, but I'll see you on the next one.